Okay, so now on to rules of indices, rule 2. So essentially this is basically like the reverse of rule 1. And if you remember 1, you can quite easily remember the second one. So if you remember our first one, when we have two things multiplied, we added the powers. Well, now we are dividing. And so division is the opposite of multiplication. So we do the opposite of addition. And so all we need to do is subtract the powers this time around. So what I've got 4 straightforward questions where we are dealing with just the letters. I've got some questions where we need to combine rule 1 and 2. And then I have some trickier questions, and I'm going to be focusing more on a sort of trick way to solve these, where we kind of disregard the rule, but it just helps a lot with these sort of questions. But you'll see what I mean when we get there. So let's just jump straight to it. So this first one, we have x to the power 6 divided by x to the power 2. So remember, we're taking away the powers this time. And so my final answer is just going to be x to the power 4. And the key thing, make sure you kind of reading left to right. So whatever's at the front is going to be at the front for your subtraction, or whatever's at the top is going to be at the front for your subtraction. So just keep that in mind when you're doing these. So now we have it as a fraction, and a fraction is just a division. So I'm going to have m to the power 15 take away 8, which is just going to be m to the power of 7. Okay, on this next one, I've got b to the power 3 over b to the power negative 5. Now, if you recall, previously I've said I like to put my negatives in brackets. And the reason I do that is that it makes it really obvious when we have a double negative, which is what we have here. 2 negatives make a positive, so that is just going to be b to the power 3 plus 5 instead, which will be b to the power of 8. Last one on this little bit, so I'm going to have t to the power of negative 2. Let's just make that a little bit neater. That negative 2 take away that negative 5. I've got that double negative going on there. So I'm going to make sure the double negative is strictly this bit here. This is not next to another negative, so it stays as a negative. So that's going to be a plus 5. And so that will just be t to the power of 3. Okay, so in this one here, we've got a little bit more going on in our fraction. The key thing right now is this top part here for us in this question 1. We can't do our rule 2 until that top bit is neatened up. So to start off with, we're going to use our rule 1. And maybe when you do go onto these combining questions, write what rule you are using at each step. So I'm just going to write out rule 1 here. And when you become more and more familiar, you don't have to do this, but it's a good way to try and help you memorize all these rules, because it will be a lot. It's fine at the start, but as you go through, it is hard to remember them all. So I'm going to have 6 to the power of 6 plus 10. And that x to the power of 5 is just going to stay on its own. So now I'm going to have x to the power of 16 over x to the power of 5. And now I can do my rule 2. Well, I have x to the power of 16 take away 5. So that's going to be x to the power of 11. So same again here, I've got stuff going on the top and the bottom of the fraction this time, and I'm going to be using my rule 1 first to just neaten it up. So on the top there, I'm going to have z to the power of negative 2 plus, and if there's nothing there, it's a 1. So z to the power of negative 2 plus 1 over z to the power of 3 plus negative 6. So neatening that up, Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. And then 3 take away 6 is going to be negative 3. And at this point, I can now use my rule 2, where I take away the powers. So I'm going to have negative 1, take away negative 3. So I've got that doubled negative there. So I'm just going to have negative 1. Let's just make that a little neater. Negative 1 plus 3. So it's going to be z to the power of 2. Okay. So these next ones here, these can be a little bit trickier. Now, you can approach them like the rule 2. And the way to do that is sort of look at the numbers first. So I've got 8 over 6. When I simplify that 8 over 6, I'm going to have 4 over 3. And then I would look at my letters. So I've got h to the power of 2 over h to the power of 4. So I'm going to be doing 2 take away 4, which is going to be negative 2. And in a later video, I'll be going over what to do when you have this negative 2 happening. But that can be a bit overwhelming at first. And so there is a little trick way that we can go about solving these questions. Now, if you're fine with doing this, go ahead, keep doing it. But there is another way where we can do it. And that's what I'm going to go over in these 4 questions. And if you are feeling like you get it, please just see what to do on this last question here. That question for a lot of people make mistakes with. So make sure you see what to do for that. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to basically break up everything on the top and everything on the bottom. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to essentially factorise my 8 and my 6 and think what my highest common factor is going to be for them. So the highest number that divides into both is going to be 2. So I'm going to have 2 times 4, which is just 8 at the top there. And then my h to the power 2, I'm going to write out my h twice. And then my 6 is going to be 2 times 3. And then I'm going to write out that h 4 times. And all I need to do now is just cross off the pairs. So cross off a 2 and a 2, h and a h, h and a h. And now I can bring it all back together. So left on the top there, all I have is a 4 over 3. And then I've got 2 h's left. So it's going to be h to the power 2. So these two answers, they look a little different, but they are actually the exact same. Okay, so let's take a look at another example. So I've got this 12m cubed over 6m squared. So firstly, my highest common factor of the 12 and the 6 is actually going to be the 6. So I'm going to write 2 times 6, and I'm just going to leave the 6 like so. Then I'm going to have 3 m's on the top. And then 2 m's on the bottom. Cancelling off my pairs, so the 6 and the 6. M and M, M and M. And so left on top I have 2m over, and I was nothing on the bottom there, so it will just be over 1. But remember, a fraction is just division, so that's saying 2m divided by 1. Which is just going to be 2m. Okay, question 3 then. So, again, splitting it up. My highest common factor of 4 and 10 is 2. So 4 is just going to be 2 times 2. 10 is going to be 2 times 5. And then breaking apart the letters, so I'm going to have 2 n's. Then 2 p's. Not 2 p's, 4 p's. And then 5 n's. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then there's still just a single p at the bottom. So crossing off the pairs, 2 and the 2, an n and an n, n and n. And then I've got no more n's on the top, but I do have a pair of P's. And so collecting everything that's left back together, I've got that 2. Then P times P times P. I've got 3 P's there, so that's just going to be P to the power of 3. And then on the bottom, I've got 5 left and 3 n's, so that's going to be n to the power of 3. Last one then. So this is the one where a lot of people can make mistakes. So my highest common factor of the 3 and the 9 is 3. So the top's just going to stay as 3, and the bottom will be 3 times 3. And then I've got 2 C's on the top and 5 C's on the bottom. Cancelling off my pairs, I've got a pair of 3's, pair of C's, pair of C's. And so again, nothing is left on the top. Everything's been cancelled out. So that means it's a 1 on the top. And on the bottom, I'm going to have 3C to the power of 3. Because I've got 3 C's there. So it's this bit here of having a 1 at the top that a lot of people make mistakes. Just make sure if everything fully cancels, it is always a 1. Let me know if there are any issues, and good luck with the work.